Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're making homemade Italian baked ziti. So we're starting out with a large skillet on medium-high heat and adding 3 to 4 tablespoons of olive oil to this. And then we're going to add in a cup of onion pepper blend, which is basically green pepper, red pepper, and onion, which if you were cutting these up from just regular vegetables, you would need a third of a cup of each. And we're going to actually heat this up and let it thaw out a little bit in the pan for about like 2 to 3 minutes before we add our next ingredient to it. So go ahead and move it around. If you have fresh vegetables, you're going to actually be cooking them a little bit as well when you're doing this. And then as we get this a little warmed up, we are going to end up adding 1 tablespoon of minced garlic on top of our peppers, and we're going to cook that in. We're not trying to go for like a long time for this cooking in the pan. We just want to actually make sure that if it's fresh vegetables, they've softened up a bit. If they were frozen, then we've gotten them thawed out and they're ready for the next ingredients. But turn it constantly as you're cooking this to make sure that everything is cooking evenly and nothing is staying on the bottom and getting scorched or whatever. So go ahead and move it around a bit as you're cooking. Make sure that everything is getting a chance to be cooked top and bottom. So this is where the spatula is your friend, so you can flip stuff over. And as these actually come up to temperature and they're cooked really well, we're going to get ready to move on to adding our ground beef into this. So you're going to use a pound of ground beef. Now, if you are not a fan of using ground beef in this, you could use Italian sausage. It's your choice, whichever you want to use, but either way, you're going to need about a pound of it. So we've always used ground beef in my family when making this, and that's what I'm going for here. You know, you could even mix part ground beef and part Italian sausage, which would taste amazing if you did it. So go ahead and get this broken up a bit, and we're going to cook this and start mixing everything together. But the whole goal here is to brown the ground beef and get it completely done. Now, on top of this, we are adding in 1 teaspoon of salt and a half teaspoon of pepper. So we want to give it a little bit of flavoring. So as you're mixing this up and turning your ground beef over, it's cooking. We want to make sure that we break this up into littler pieces. We don't want huge hunks of the ground beef, or even if you're using the Italian sausage. We just want to make sure that we break it to a point where it's easily manageable and easily eaten. So we're not trying to have something as huge as a meatball sticking out here. So we're going to go ahead and break this up. But as we're breaking it up, we're going to move the peppers and onions into the ground beef as well, because we really want to give everything a chance to mingle, get the flavor, and then get that ground beef browned off. So this is going to take a few minutes to do, but remember that you need to actually move this every few minutes to make sure that you are, 1, breaking it up, but 2, getting it browned. Now, along the way, as you're cooking this, if you notice that you have a lot of grease developing in your pan, because sometimes ground beef does that, you want to spoon some of that out of there or remove it from the pan before we add any kind of sauce to this, because we don't want it mixing in, because then you'll get a greasy sauce and it's not always pleasant to eat. So we're going to keep going with this. We're going to keep browning it. And when you get to a point where it's really browned, if you decide that you have way too much grease in your pan, go ahead and remove it. It's perfectly fine. It does happen. So, because by the time I get to my point of getting ready to add tomato sauce to this, I will be removing grease from my pan as well. So keep turning this over. I would come back to it like, almost every minute or so and just flip this around a little bit to make sure that it's cooking completely through. But remember, we are on a medium-high heat, and it shouldn't take long for this to do its deal. Now, when you first put meat into your pan, it's going to take a minute for it to start cooking. So it does happen. But just go ahead and work this as best you can until you start browning. Now, coming up, we will be, after we've gotten all of the grease out of here, adding in tomato sauce and everything else to this to start actually making a really great stuff that's going to go over top of our noodles. Because we're going to make a great sauce with meat and everything that's going to be so great. Because there's nothing better than a good meat sauce, but it just has to be made right. So go ahead and keep turning your stuff until we see that this is really browned. And as you can see with mine, I am at that point now where I'm ready to go ahead and add more to this. And I've already removed as much of the oil that I want to remove from mine. The grease is out of there. So I'm adding 24-ounce can of tomato sauce. Now mine was traditional flavored. You could actually experiment and use a different flavor if you want on this. I just went straight forward with the traditional taste of this. And basically it's just 24 ounces. And then to this, I'm going to add 14.5 ounce can of diced tomatoes. And these are the Italian flavored ones that have the basil, garlic, and oregano in it, which again, that's going to punch the flavor of everything else that we're doing here. So go ahead once the tomato sauce and the tomatoes are in, and stir them through the peppers, onions, and ground beef and everything to make sure that you've got this really good and mixed together before we do anything else to it. And we're going to let this simmer for like a second here, and then we're going to add some seasoning to it. So we're adding 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And I know people are going to say something really nasty about this next part, but I add sugar to this, which makes it kind of like a marinara, but it cuts down on the acidity of the tomatoes and takes away a little bit of that harsh taste. So we're going to use about 2 teaspoons of sugar, and we're going to mix it in, and it's going to taste really great. And if you haven't done this before, just try it. It really won't hurt you. But it does give it such a great flavor, and it cuts down on that edge of that taste that sometimes tomatoes are really kind of like harsh. This helps that, but there's nothing wrong with something that kind of has a little bit of a marinara taste to it, because it's so good that way. And it's just something to give you a different kind of taste if you're not used to it. I'm not saying that you have to use the sugar. You don't. And you know what? I fix it sometimes myself without sugar in it, so it's perfectly fine. So we're going to set our sauce to the side and just let it be for a few minutes. And we're going to have a medium pot here, which we're adding some oil and some salt to, so that way when we put the ziti in, it doesn't stick. And then we're going to go ahead and put a pound of ziti in. So that way, once this water's at heat, we're going to put the ziti into it, and we're going to actually let this cook for the instruction time on the box, because everything has its own cook time on it. I would say this is probably about 10 minutes, but your box may say something different on it, you know. At this time, you want to preheat your oven to 370 degrees, because it won't be long before we're assembling this and getting it into the oven. So we're going to take, I would say this is a 9.5 by 13 pan. We're going to spray it with some non-stick cooking spray, because we don't want this setting up shop, because if it does, it's going to be something you have to scrape out of there. And then once we get this all ready to roll, we are going to bring over our drained ziti. We've already taken the water out of it, and we're going to put this in the bottom of here. And yes, it is still steaming. And once this is in place, we're going to go ahead and get ready to add our sauce over top of it. Now you can actually see it again. Okay, so pour your sauce over top, and then once we get the sauce in here, we're going to kind of distribute it amongst the noodles by moving it around a little bit, pushing it from side to side, top to bottom. Make sure it covers the whole thing. Now mind you, as this is baking in the oven, the sauce is going to work its way through the noodles anyway, but you kind of want to move it through a little bit just to make sure that it's getting everything a little bit coated, so that thing, like when it's in the oven, it doesn't like totally not let some of the noodles get the sauce, and then some of them turn hard. We don't like hard noodles. So then we're going to take, on top of this, we're going to put some Parmesan cheese, which is about 1/3 of a cup. Just sprinkle it all over the top of there. And then we're going to add about 2 cups of mozzarella on top of this. This is going to give it like this really great layer of cheese on top of there. So when you're scooping this out, you're going to get a lot of cheese sometimes. You're going to get a lot of sauce. You're going to get a lot of noodles. And it's such a great thing because it all mixes together to make such a wonderful meal. So this is just one of the best things. Now, when we get this all coated, it's going into the oven for 30 minutes. And when it comes back, it will look something like this. And I gotta tell you, this is so worth the effort of making this wonderful meal because it is something you will love. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.